At 8:17 on a Monday morning, after 19 years of keeping Caldwell Mercer Technologies out of court, out of scandal, and out of the kind of headlines that make investors suddenly unavailable for comment, I was called into conference room 4, just a cardboard box, a severance envelope, and Ethan Caldwell wearing the careful little smile of a man who had practiced compassion in the mirror and still somehow looked expensive and empty. "Maurice," he said, folding his hands like he was about to deliver a TED Talk no one asked for. "The company is moving into a younger, faster, more flexible era. There it was. Not thank you for 19 years. Not you saved us from 11 regulatory investigations. Not your risk controls protected roughly $42 million in potential penalties. No, apparently, I had aged out of usefulness like expired yogurt in the break room fridge. I looked at him and asked, 'Are you firing me because I'm 52? His smile twitched. "Of course not," Ethan said. "We're saying your role no longer aligns with our modernization strategy. Corporate English is a beautiful language. It can turn discrimination into a slideshow. If you're wondering why they wanted me gone before the $186 million Northbridge meeting, please like this video. Where are you listening from? And what time is it there? Because this was only the beginning." Ethan Caldwell had been COO for 6 months. His main qualification was marrying the daughter of Victor Harlan, the board's most powerful member and a man who treated federal regulations like polite suggestions from people who couldn't afford his watch. I was head of risk compliance. My job was to make sure the company did not sign illegal contracts, hide conflicts of interest, or accidentally stroll into a federal investigation with both hands in its pockets. Naturally, I was the problem. Ethan slid the envelope toward me. "We'll need your badge, laptop, and system access within 30 minutes. You won't be needed for the Northbridge meeting this afternoon." That meeting concerned a $186 million contract I had flagged as legally radioactive. I stared at the empty box. Then I smiled. Because Ethan didn't know what had arrived in my inbox the night before. A federal witness summons, and Victor Harlan's name was printed on page 1. Let me make one thing clear. This is a fictional story, shaped with a few AI-enhanced details to make it more emotional, dramatic, and meaningful. So listen not just for the twist, but for the lesson behind it. Now, let's continue. For 19 years, I had been the woman everyone called when the company wanted something approved, but did not want to know why it might be illegal. My title was Head of Risk Compliance, which sounded boring enough to make executives underestimate me. That was convenient. While they chased bonuses, headlines, and golf course handshakes, I documented everything: risk warnings, meeting minutes, contract revisions, approval trails, and every sudden minor change that appeared after Victor Harlan had lunch with someone important. Victor was not the CEO. He was worse. He was the board member everyone obeyed while pretending they were making independent decisions. He had a charming habit of saying, "Speed is the new standard," whenever someone mentioned due diligence. In normal English, that meant, "Please stop asking questions before the money arrives." I had blocked bad vendor deals, stopped privacy violations, and forced disclosures that saved Caldwell Mercer from lawsuits nobody sent me flowers for avoiding. My reward was being called cautious, difficult, old-fashioned. Funny how old-fashioned usually means still remembers the law. Then Ethan Caldwell arrived. Polished, young, and freshly married to Victor's daughter. He was introduced as the face of modernization. Within weeks, modernization meant skipping reviews, shortening audit windows, and replacing experienced people with employees who called regulations workflow friction. I tried to be fair. I trained him. I explained why compliance was not a decorative department you kept near the legal team for atmosphere. He nodded through every session like a golden retriever in a tailored suit. Then, one Thursday, Human Resources accidentally projected a workforce planning spreadsheet during a meeting. There were names, ages, salaries, benefit costs, and a column labeled adaptability risk. Every employee over 50 had been marked yellow or red. Mine was red. Ethan cleared his throat and said, That's just internal modeling, I said. No, Ethan. That is age discrimination wearing a budget hat. 9 days before they fired me, I submitted a formal risk report warning that the company's workforce plan could violate employment law. They ignored it. Of course they did, because removing me had already become part of the plan. The age report was ugly, but the Northbridge file was worse. Northbridge Medical Systems was supposed to be our victory lap, a $186 million 5-year contract that would put Caldwell Mercer into 43 hospitals and make executives speak in that humble tone people use while secretly calculating bonuses. Ethan called it transformational. Victor called it time-sensitive. I called it a lawsuit wearing a bow tie. The first problem was the third-party security audit. It had expired 47 days earlier. The second was the data privacy assessment, still marked incomplete in the compliance tracker. The third was the subcontractor listed for implementation support, Harlan Strategic Partners. Yes, Harlan. Victor's family office had a financial interest in the subcontractor, but the conflict disclosure section was blank, not vague, not pending, blank. Like honesty had taken a personal day. I brought it up in the contract review meeting. Ethan leaned back and sighed. Maris, we cannot keep treating every opportunity like a crime scene, I said. Then stop leaving fingerprints everywhere. Victor joined by video, sitting in some leather-paneled room designed to make ethics feel underdressed. He smiled without warmth. Maris, he said, you have always been thorough. But sometimes leadership means knowing which details to leave behind. There it was, again, expensive language for cheap behavior. I did what I always did. I wrote a 14-page risk memorandum and sent it to legal. Internal audit, the risk committee, and Ethan. I listed the expired certification, the unfinished security review, the undisclosed conflict, and the regulatory exposure if we signed before remediation. 2 hours later, Ethan replied with one sentence, let's not overcomplicate momentum. The next morning, my access to the Northbridge folder was revoked. It called it routine restructuring. Adorable. Nothing says innocence like locking the fire inspector out of the burning building, so I checked version history through the general contract archive. Then I saw it. A new draft appeared. Every warning I had added to the risk appendix was gone. The deleted appendix told me Northbridge was not the only problem. It was the prize. The method was hidden in a meeting invite labeled Future Workforce Alignment, because apparently discrimination sounds better after a consultant names it. Ethan held it in the executive conference room with HR, 2 in-house attorneys, and a slide deck so glossy it practically lied for him. I sat at the end of the table, still officially head of risk compliance, still inconveniently able to read. Slide 7 showed a workforce map by age, salary, benefit cost, and adaptability profile. Employees over 50 were grouped under phrases like slow adoption, legacy mindset, and high benefit exposure. My name was not on the slide, but my entire generation was. I let Ethan finish his sentence about strategic renewal. Then I said, for the minutes, I object to this language. It creates clear evidence of age-based targeting. The room froze. One attorney stopped typing. The other suddenly discovered great spiritual depth in his coffee. Ethan's jaw tightened. Maris, this is internal planning, not a legal filing. That is generous, I said, because as legal filings go, it is terrible, still discoverable, though. He leaned forward. You are making this unnecessarily hostile. No, I said. I am making it traceable. I requested that my objection be entered into the meeting minutes verbatim. Ethan hated that. People like Ethan loved vague words until someone pinned them to a page. Afterward, Tessa Grant from HR caught me near the elevators. Her voice dropped. Victor wants you out before Northbridge signs. I did not tell you that. Of course she hadn't. Plausible deniability. The official cologne of executive cowards, back at my desk. I found an email from Victor's assistant, forwarded to me by mistake. Subject review Maris Dean role immediately today. The mistaken email turned into a calendar invite soon after. Conference room 4. HR present, legal present, no subject line, because suspense was part of the severance package. Ethan sat across from me with Tessa Grant and a company attorney. The cardboard box waited beside my chair. Empty. Maris, Ethan began. After reviewing our modernization needs, we have determined your role no longer fits our transformation model. I looked at Tessa. She looked at the table. So, I said, I am being removed after objecting to an age-targeting plan and a defective Northbridge contract. Ethan blinked. That is not accurate. Your departure is unrelated to those matters. Convenient timing. I said, very modern. He pushed the severance agreement forward. 16 weeks of pay. Continued health coverage for 2 months. A cheerful paragraph thanking me for my service. As if 19 years could be gift-wrapped with a PDF. Then I saw the clause. I was required not to cooperate, voluntarily or otherwise, with any inquiry, investigation, review, or proceeding involving Caldwell Mercer, its officers, directors, affiliates, or related parties unless legally compelled. I read it twice. Because stupidity, that expensive, deserves a second look. Ethan, I said, are you asking me to sign an agreement discouraging cooperation with an investigation? His mouth tightened. It is standard language. The attorney's face suggested it was not standard language. I set the pen down. I'm not signing this. Ethan leaned back. Then you may be leaving money on the table. No, I said. Standing. I am leaving evidence on yours. I handed over my badge and laptop. I took no files, no drives, no shortcuts. I did not need to steal a thing. Every warning was already in their system. That severance agreement became the first document my lawyer sent to federal investigators. If you think Ethan Caldwell was right to push me out after I spoke up, comment fair move. But if you think he crossed the line, comment stand with Maris. I need to know where you stand. 3 weeks after I walked out with my cardboard box, I walked into a federal interview room with nothing but my attorney, a notebook, and the calm of a woman who had stopped being surprised by executive stupidity. The investigator asked the expected question first. Ms. Dean, did you retain any company documents after your termination? No. I said, I did not take files, downloads, screenshots, recordings, or drives. Victor's lawyers would have loved that answer, right up until I finished it. But I can tell you exactly where the records are, who received them, and which system logs will prove they existed before anyone panicked. That was the part Ethan had underestimated. I did not need stolen evidence. I had procedure, timestamps, distribution lists, and 19 years of knowing where companies hide their sins while pretending they are just organizing folders. I gave the investigators the timeline in order: the Northbridge risk memo, the revoked folder access, the workforce meeting, my formal objection, the accidental email from Victor's assistant, the termination meeting, and the severance clause discouraging cooperation with investigations. 2 days later, Ethan tried his little counterattack. An internal statement described me as a former employee dissatisfied with organizational change. Charming. Nothing says innocence like attacking a witness with vocabulary from a leadership retreat. Victor went further. He told board members I had been struggling to keep pace. Apparently, after 19 years of saving them from penalties, I had forgotten how calendars worked. Then, my last performance review surfaced. Score 4.8 out of 5. Reviewer Ethan Caldwell. Comment: Maris Dean is essential to our regulatory confidence and institutional risk memory. Institutional risk memory. That was corporate for the person who remembers what we hoped everyone forgot. The investigators also pulled the audit trail on my employee file. That was when the room got beautifully quiet. Someone had edited my review after my termination, lowering several categories and adding concerns about adaptability. The system kept the original, and the user ID belonged to Ethan Caldwell. Once Ethan's edit trail appeared, Victor Harlan stopped pretending this was a misunderstanding and started acting like a man whose yacht had developed legal problems. He hired Whitcomb, Vale and Rhodes, the kind of law firm that bills by the breath and speaks in paragraphs designed to exhaust oxygen. Their strategy was simple: smear me, sacrifice Ethan, and rename every warning I had given as process confusion. During my next deposition, Victor's lead attorney smiled at me like we were old friends separated by mutual disgust. "Ms. Dean, isn't it possible you are interpreting routine business pressure as misconduct because you were upset about being terminated?" I said. He waited for more. I did not give him theater, I gave him dates. March 11th. Northbridge Risk Memo sent at 9:42 a.m. March 12th. My access was restricted. March 14th. Victor Harlan joined the contract call at 3:40 p.m. March 17th. The risk appendix was removed. The attorney shifted. "You claim Mr. Harlan personally directed that removal," I heard him say. "If the risk language stays in, Northbridge slows down. Take it out." Victor leaned back at the far end of the room, wearing the bored expression of a man accustomed to other people fearing consequences for him. "Did you record this call?" his attorney asked. "No?" Victor almost smiled. I turned one page in my notes, but his assistant circulated a call summary to legal at 4:06 p.m. The subject line was Northbridge acceleration items. Bullet 3 reads, "Remove risk appendix language before final client circulation per VH." The room went still. Victor's attorney requested a break, which is lawyer language for somebody just swallowed a nail. The best part was that I had not hidden anything, copied anything, or trapped anyone. Victor's own office had memorialized his instruction in writing because rich men love documentation when they think it protects them. By the time we resumed, Victor was no longer looking at me. He was looking at Ethan by the time the hearing opened. Victor's smile had been reduced to something thinner than paper and twice as useless. I sat before the board, federal investigators, outside counsel, and Ethan, who looked like he had discovered consequences were not just for junior staff. Victor's attorney stood first, polished and smug. "Ms. Dean," he said, "is it possible that newer compliance systems evolved beyond your direct technical familiarity?" There it was. Age discrimination in a silk tie. I smiled. "No. I helped design the control framework for those systems. I also trained Ethan on the exception dashboard. Twice. The second time, he asked if audit logs could be summarized away. A board member coughed. Ethan stared at his hands. Then the documents came out, one after another, each more embarrassing than the last. My 4.8 performance review, my Northbridge risk memo, the workforce spreadsheet marking employees over 50 as adaptability risks, my written objection, the termination letter citing modernization, the severance clause discouraging cooperation with investigations, the contract version history showing the removed risk appendix, Victor's assistant's call summary naming VH as the source. It was not a smoking gun. It was a fireworks show with exhibit numbers. Victor tried to interrupt. "This is being taken out of context," the federal investigator replied. "Then we will review the full context." Beautiful sentence. Very simple. Very fatal. By noon, the board voted to open an independent investigation. HR was placed under audit. Ethan was ordered to preserve all communications. Northbridge paused signature on the $186 million contract pending compliance review. That last part finally cracked Victor's expression. For months, they had treated me like an old file cabinet blocking progress. Suddenly, the file cabinet had receipts. Then Northbridge's general counsel joined by video. She explained that Northbridge had selected Caldwell Mercer partly because of its documented compliance controls and long-term risk management history. Specifically, she said, the framework led by Maris Dean gave our board confidence. No one spoke. I looked at Ethan, then at Victor. They had fired the one person whose work had made the deal possible, and now the deal was refusing to move forward without me. After Northbridge froze the deal, Caldwell Mercer discovered a new corporate value panic. Ethan was suspended by Wednesday morning. His office was boxed up with far less ceremony than mine, which felt unfair. I had at least earned my cardboard through 19 years of service. He earned his through nepotism and poor email hygiene. Tessa Grant. suddenly blessed with a working conscience, admitted the workforce list had not come from HR analytics. It had come from Victor's office, with instructions to identify expensive legacy employees before the Northbridge signing. Apparently, discrimination sounded more efficient when printed in a spreadsheet. Then, legal began cooperating. 2 in-house attorneys produced emails showing they had warned Ethan that phrases like younger team, high benefit exposure, and adaptability risk could create serious employment law exposure. Ethan had replied, "Understood. But V wants movement. Movement. Such a graceful word for pushing people off a cliff." Victor tried one final performance. He threatened to sue me for damaging the company's reputation. My attorney answered with one sentence, "Ms. Dean testified under lawful process and retained no confidential documents." The threat died before lunch, which was unusually fast for something carrying Victor's cologne. Then, shareholders found the real rot. Harlan Strategic Partners, the subcontractor hidden inside the Northbridge rollout, had financial ties to Victor's family fund. If the contract had closed, millions would have flowed sideways through a door nobody was supposed to notice. That was when Victor pointed at Ethan. "My son-in-law lacked judgment." He told the board, "Imagine that." The golden boy became disposable the moment he stopped shining. 2 days later, Ethan asked to meet me at my attorney's office. He looked smaller without the title, like a motivational poster after a rainstorm. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I'm not here for an apology." He swallowed. "Then why are you here for the truth?" He stared at the table, then finally said the sentence my lawyer had been waiting for, in plain English. "Clearly, Victor told me to remove you before Northbridge closed, because you were the only person who could stop it." Ethan's statement became the hinge everything turned on. At the final hearing, I sat across from Victor Harlan, who treated laws like speed bumps and people like office furniture. The investigator asked whether my termination was connected to my age and compliance objections. I took one breath. "Yes," I said. "I was not removed because I failed to understand the future. I was removed because I understood too much about their past, for once." Victor had no charming sentence ready. His file was referred to prosecutors and securities regulators. Ethan lost his position and, under the settlement, was barred from serving as officer at Caldwell Mercer for years. The company agreed to compensate older employees pushed out under the renewal plan, reinstate several roles, and submit to 3 years of employment and compliance audits. It was not revenge with fireworks. It was accountability with signatures. Northbridge still signed, but only after demanding new oversight, clean subcontractors, and an outside compliance advisor. Me? I did not return to my old office. I had no desire to sit beneath fluorescent lights while people pretended the carpet had not been on fire. Instead, I started Dean Integrity Partners, helping companies protect experienced workers and build systems that make misconduct harder to hide. People asked if I destroyed Caldwell Mercer. No, I helped separate the company from the men exploiting it, and after 19 years of being called difficult, outdated, and too careful, I finally understood something. Careful was never weakness. Careful was evidence. What stayed with me most was not the moment Victor fell, but the moment I realized my quiet integrity had been building a shield long before I knew I would need one. This story taught me 5 deep lessons. First, doing the right thing matters even when no one applauds. Second, age is not a weakness. Experience is evidence of survival, wisdom, and value. Third, documentation can protect the truth when powerful people try to rewrite it. Fourth, courage does not always roar. Sometimes it calmly answers questions under oath. Fifth, real justice is not about destroying everyone. It is about stopping the people who abuse power. And you? Did this story leave you with a lesson of your own? Share it in the comments so others can learn from your perspective too. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to remember their worth. Your voice helps this message reach further.
Welcome to Boardroom Revenge Stories, a channel focused on workplace conflict, corporate betrayal, power struggles, and quiet justice. Our stories follow a structured workflow to deliver a consistent, immersive experience. We start by analyzing real discussions on Reddit, Facebook, Quora, and blogs. Next, we craft original scripts using AI tools like ChatGPT. We then use 11 Labs to transform text into high-quality voice and edit everything in CapCut for a smooth, cinematic finish. Thumbnails are designed with Canva, and every video is carefully reviewed before release. These stories go beyond entertainment, revealing how power truly works and how justice quietly unfolds.